Wedlow, and this is Televisionation. This is our video vlog or podcast, and that we have started. And we're here to look out into the world to see how people in the Televisionation are doing, the TV industry all around the world. And I am very happy to have Adam Helfgott. I look over at my notes to make sure I pronounce Helfgott, you're CEO of MadHive, which is madhive.com. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Well, it's been a technology hell morning, but here we are. Things are finally working thanks to this platform. And where are you? Are you in New York, where the company's based?
No, I am in Connecticut, like an hour north of New York at the moment.
Okay, so, and everybody's okay? Are things...
Yeah, everybody's okay. We had a couple of, close calls, with different people and people's family members in our company, but everyone is, safe and sound and taking precautions and all.
That's
all
good.
That stuff.
What?
Yeah. I said, and all that stuff, everyone is doing their thing.
I think I've been in this house now for about 2 months, except for we have a little backyard here. So it's very difficult for all those people who have to work out in the world, and I commend their bravery. All of us in our homes, it's hard, but okay. So let's talk about the television universe, world, nation.
Okay.
MadHive has been doing really interesting work trying to protect advertising out there in the OTT marketplace, right? You're trying to make sure that programmatic advertising is an honest business.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely for sure. It needs to be an honest business, just like television's an honest business itself, with affidavits and very manual kind of work, and like a spot aired or didn't air, like it's one or the other. And there's, a lot of evidence to show one way or the other. And in programmatic advertising, the pipes were originally built around mobile. And from the point of view when mobile had way too much scale, and a couple of really smart people came up with these ideas of programmatic trading of excess inventory in order to basically, it was just too much work for any human to manage the inventory of all these platforms at once. So that's where the SSPs and DSPs came up. And so the tech, though, is great, but there's a lot of concepts that exist in our consumer internet world that don't really exist in the real-time bidding universe, like security or data provenance of sorts, So our point of view is, as TV moves digital, let's upgrade the system and allow TV buyers and sellers to kind of trade in the same way, because we can. It's 2020. We don't really need to deal with technology that's 10 years old.
Well, as you upgrade and modernize, that puts you in the same sort of circle of people, I think, who are trying to make advertising sales more measurable, more trackable, more consistent across all platforms. Doesn't that put you sort of in those discussion groups behind the scenes as well? As well as just providing the service that you do?
Yeah, 100%. At MadHive, we've had to build a lot of technology internally to allow our customers, a lot of the major media, local media providers, like a Tegna or W Scripts, companies like that as their buyers are buying OTT, how do things kind of stay the same? And so measurement and understanding what audience they're buying is a big part of that. And and device graphs and the mobile world are basically centered around someone's mobile device, not around the household. And so we've had to retool a device graph around that. And then how do we authenticate our device graph? So we're rolling out a mobile panel so that we can then statistically validate our device graph, things like that, so that, we're not eating our own dog food.
Not pleasant. But how do you even keep control or aware of all the emerging new devices out there? That sounds like a whole full-time job in and of itself.
It is, although there are third parties that will validate, new devices and things like that. So like in programmatic advertising, everything comes across, in a bid request, and everything has a user agent tied to it. And there's companies out there that that's all they do is catalog what's new and whatnot. And we kind of leave it to those guys to say what device is what. From the measurement point of view is that, hey, third-party data source says this IP address is an auto intender or is in this television demographic, 20 to 49 or whatever it is. How do we prove that that's actually true? And that's more like from a panel point of view. How do we do that? Where panels really come in is like who's watching what, right? And programmatic advertising isn't really sold from a content point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's still this big gap is that when OTT is sold, we don't really know who's actually sitting on the couch watching that OTT if it's on the big screen. Where actually you have a better clue in television advertising because you know what show it's on. Yeah.
I mean, so you're using blockchain to ensure sort of content, content protection or awareness of the piece of content. How are you using blockchain?
So we're using cryptography and blockchain to kind of like as an underlying piece of our architecture in our supply chain, right? So a seller of ad space, say it's a piece of Peacock inventory, and as it gets into the programmatic ecosystem, on the buy side, it might pass 3 to 5 different supply chain partners, and by the time it gets to the buy side, you don't really know if any of those supply partners have changed things in the bid request to begin with, right? So it might be Peacock on a mobile phone, and then someone in the middle changed the mobile phone to say it's a television. And because there's no SSL, like that concept that we all have when we buy something on Amazon and e-commerce, that idea of like my information is secure among the whole transaction, that idea does not exist in media trading right now. Is that we put that idea in there so that like the inventory and everything about the inventory is kind of encoded with encryption inside of the bid request. So the buyer can basically prove that it's real or not real. And so with the things like that, White Ops and Pixelate have been finding over the past, and ourselves at Ad Ledger have been finding over the past couple of years, supply chain authenticity is very important, because there's just a lot of opportunity to inject or change traffic inside of these ecosystems.
Why don't we have an SSL layer?
Momentum. It's momentum, right? It's the systems were created. The OpenRTB ecosystem was built, in late, early 2009, 2012, that time period. To have high-speed encryption was a lot more expensive than it is today, and we're talking millions of transactions a day, and we're also among a trusted group of partners, and so they just didn't really think it was needed. The trade-off to have this extra layer of security among the initial group of players didn't really make sense. And now it's this huge ecosystem, but all these platforms are built, and now it's not. And now is the time to kind of jam this stuff in, layer it on top of it. The IAB is working at certain initiatives there as well, and and we're working with them in different areas with Ad Ledger. But the goal is to basically secure inventory and let buyers know what they're buying, and then authenticate that against audience data in much the same way.
So do you have a sense of how long it would take to get an initiative out the door and piloted? I mean, I know that they're working on it.
We're in pilot right now. We've been testing it with some of our direct supply, and it works. And the one interesting thing about this time period with this COVID-19 quarantine time period that we're all in is that the appetite to try new things and like find the headspace to do that in television, but just in general, like the creativity levels are up on, hey, let's try new things while we're all doing something different, and how we're working and things like that. So we're finding a lot of these conversations are accelerating with our partners on new ways to trade, buy, sell, authenticate inventory, and test new ideas. So
it's interesting that you say that, because a conversation I had recently with some French companies providing technology to broadcasters. It was sort of similar in as much as, you can't deliver equipment, you can't do, this or that. So you have to start focusing on innovation. You have to start solving those problems that have been sitting around waiting, and that maybe now's the time to just get cracking. I know I'm under pressure to innovate what we do here in Televisionation. Here I am, and TVOT. So it's, I'm glad you said that. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
So would you say that this is now a top priority for your company, or like what's happening now that you're all distributed? What are you working on, and how are your clients handling this moment?
Yeah. So, we focus a lot on local television buyers. Not so much that MadHive is a local TV company. We think that buying with high fidelity in a local market is the future, and that local television players are, now just getting into the digital game. And, so to give them tooling that is good and that allows them to really focus on small markets at scale is important to us, because we think even national campaigns will all be treated like local campaigns. Once a robot is in charge of making buys and CRM data is there, like a national campaign will have a higher spend automatically in markets where they're doing well, and the reverse of that, like lower spend where they're doing well and higher spend where they're not doing well, kind of in automated ways, and have spend increase and decrease in markets, very, very dynamically. So that's the way our engine works. MadHive is essentially basically a big data streaming pipeline with a decision engine.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where you are in the pipeline, if we're one of our supply partners, you're kind of on the supply side of the pipeline. But if you're on the buy side, you're over here. But media is one of the only industries I've seen that where the buy sides and sell sides and the marketplaces themselves are all different companies. And in Google ecosystem or Facebook or Amazon, they're kind of all one system as well. So what we're trying to do is build an ecosystem of pieces of technology that can be relied upon to have systematic access to the open market of outside of those closed platforms.
In this sort of moment of pause, are you seeing a lot more fraud? Are you seeing people trying to take advantage of where there might be some slowdown of ad campaign deliveries? Or you still have to provide the services to the advertising community, those who are willing to go forward. So like is there growth on, like I said, on the fraud side, or are your clients and still delivering?
Yeah, so the fraud is interesting. There's a lot more vectors for fake or misrepresented inventory in television inventory than display inventory, simply because of the way, it's similar to video, I guess, but the way video works, and that there's lack of cookies and just a lack of kind of technology intelligence is kind of growing in this space. So where there's some ignorance, it's easy. Like there was this thing like where there's no such thing as fraud in directly connected inventory, but there's so many ways for things to kind of not render in the right way. So like invalid traffic or sophisticated invalid traffic happens everywhere. But we see all sorts of things, like we'll have 100% VCR, looks like really high quality inventory, view completion rate inventory. And then we start digging into our logs and we see that the video itself was never downloaded. So that's probably not someone that watching television. It's probably a robot somewhere. Things like that.
Are they generating revenue from all of this? What's the business model here for people to do this?
The business model is general. I ask myself that all the time. There's, all sorts of ways to, I think, to get money out of the system in that sense there, right? So if it's aggregated traffic somewhere else that's being packaged up, and then, bought by one media company and kind of sold into the supply chain of others, the media, those dollars will go, they'll basically, as they say, follow the money in that sense there. The last thing that the Monarch, was it Monarch? I don't know, the one that White Ops and Pixelate described, a lot of the inventory was misrepresented with like typos in like the user agents and in the names of the inventory itself.
So you're saying it's user error?
No, it's like, let me get into the supply side platform inventory that is almost like Discovery or almost like a Amazon Firebox, but it's like, like a Discovery with like DYSCOVERY, and then like a unsophisticated buyer or trader might just click that button without thinking it's Discovery, and then it's really just some other inventory.
So this is all basically the spam of the TV industry.
That's exactly what it is. It's just people taking advantage of a new market, and then there's sophisticated technology that we've seen out there. That's what White Ops recently uncovered, of basically fake dynamic ad insertion platforms that will inject inventory into the supply side platforms that are masqueraded as something else.
Do you think?
So I might go and.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I might have let's say I'm a developer and I created a weird viral app of like a flashlight app that millions of people have downloaded, and I have it calling ads in the background. Because there's no SSL, I get that ad into my system, and instead of saying flashlight app, I say it's high-end media company inventory and put it in. And if I have a legitimate partnership with that high-end media company and I kind of blend them together, maybe no one notices. So that's kind of the stuff that.
Do you think these are individual actors out there, or you were saying it might just be a bot, or do you think this is? Do you think it's like like corporate? Corporate espionage or even governmental espionage? What's the source of all this?
I think it's just people
with nothing to do, and
yeah, I think it's just people being opportunistic in the ecosystem and like seeing vectors. And a lot of the TV industry was built, online industry was built by like basically traffic generators, people that used to buy and sell traffic and things like that. So there's a lot of like tricks of that trade in there. Maybe I buy a 60-second spot of like a very, very niche Roku inventory. I make the first 30 seconds of that like educational content, and then I make the second 30 seconds an ad that I then rebrand as the supply source as being the educational company. Like that's a practice that is very, very gray, and that happens all the time.
So what kinds of improvements will you be making, do you think, in this sort of moment? Do you think, is there something coming out soon that you can talk about, or what kinds of other layers of protection?
So there will be an announcement in a couple of months. We're with basically some of the blockchain technology. There's a project being worked on right now to basically prove provenance and authentication of like certain pieces of content. But really, what the goal is, and it's what we're working towards, and over the summer it should be live at scale, is to have inventory authenticated by every member of the supply chain so that you can identify if it was changed. And it's basically just a score. Like, there's still going to be a lot of inventory that doesn't touch this, these cryptography pipes, and it'll basically be up to the buyers. Another way to think about this stuff a lot as well, with our system, we have this like real-time system where, attribution can be tied in to the buying really, really quickly. And so that, if I'm not getting outcomes on my buying, I'm doing something wrong, right? Everyone advertises on television for a reason, right? So whether that's, I'm polling in a market to see if like people have seen my brand, and that's like the outcome I'm looking for is brand awareness, or if it's actual CRM data for, someone's e-commerce site, that data basically enhances algorithms to know what good traffic and bad traffic looks like.
It'd be interesting to see a chart to measure the success through attribution and versus the fraud.
Right, because basically are low conversion rates because I'm buying a lot of fraud, or they're just low conversion rates. That's what it would be nice to see.
Does that exist?
we're releasing a free tool for anyone to basically start measuring their campaigns to see like true frequency, like what, like indexing against different types of demos, things like that. So we can start seeing this type of stuff, basically a wrapper to tags and things like that, just as a way to start getting these ideas out there more. So.
On a given campaign, maybe I should have asked this earlier, but on a given campaign, what percentage, what percentage is fraud? What percentage does a company lose?
Well, in our system, we say it's 0, but we think this probably like 1% gets through. But we see a lot in the general ecosystem of CTV, where I'm like, like fishing for, I'm like, like I have 100 milliseconds to buy this impression or not. In the bid stream of advertising in OTT, our estimates and our studies that we did last October, November, were about 20%. Is that the available impression pool is about 20% of it is stuff you probably don't want to buy. Mm-hmm. So, and White Ops said last week or the week before that number is 28%. So it's and then in display in mobile, there's people that say it's at like 70%, but right. So
your job is to separate that wheat from the chaff. And I know you mentioned that you were working with Tegna. Did you say that? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious if you are part of that whole sort of local broadcasting, all the different broadcasting groups and the work with ATSC. Is that something that is, that's not OTT right now, but is that something that you're moving towards?
Yep, it is. It's similar in ideas to like what Project OR is and things like that. Basically, how do we take linear inventory and make it addressable? Mm-hmm. The MadHive's goal is to be able to reach audiences on whatever screen they're on. And so any technology that allows us to standardize the way to reach that audience, we're going to, promote and build, so on there's the TIP initiative, which the broadcasters are all creating standardized things around for ordering. Mm-hmm. We're, writing a version of the spec to add OTT onto that. And then with ATSC3 or next gen TV right now, we have some of our researchers, in those specs right now and seeing what we can add into that to basically, we think the TV manufacturers themselves should be the SSPs, and kind of give software to do that, is how we look at it.
You'd think actually that would be like a very important thing for them to do to create that sense of like collaboration and partnership in the rest of the community. Are they not moving in that direction?
They are
relying on software companies.
Yeah. It's like, if you think about it from the cryptography point of view, every single ad that's on my television, the TV manufacturer can encode and sample and basically put proof that it was on the screen. And there's really no one else that has as much direct access to what happens on the screen than the TV manufacturer. There's apps that run, but even those can be fooled to a degree. But it's but also to give 3 to 15% of the ad dollar to a middle company to provide that, when the TV manufacturer can kind of just do it for free or reduce the fees dramatically. It would make TV on digital be much more like TV in linear, where there's not these huge delivery fees. To deliver a OTT ad is much more expensive than to deliver a linear ad.
And the fact that there aren't that many manufacturers out there, you'd think that, that seems like a worthwhile project for them to take on. Maybe it costs too much money. Do you know why they haven't pursued this? It would make them so much more.
Well, Vizio is pursuing it with Project OR.
Right. Project OR.
So, and then, it's like, from Samsung, Sony, LG, I've been in South Korea and been in LG's offices talking to them about these things, and it's just slow moving. Like the team that's writing the code that's on the chips in the TV, and then the ad sales team that's building the products are in different countries, and they speak literally different languages. So it's just, and then if I want to start getting code into the Sony television ecosystem. It's about a year and a half to even get that. And then every human that has a TV has to then update their system. So it's a long process. None of this stuff is
well, it
fast.
should be delivered in, like smart TV software updates.
Yes, that's what will happen. It'll be in the smart TV updates. Assuming that that the chips on the TVs even have the ability to create proof that that happened. Like Intel, their secure computing platform allows chips to sign the code that's running on it. Like every time you run something on your Mac, it's been authenticated from the developer. So the same way that when I'm opening up, Adobe Acrobat, my computer can prove that it's not a fake Adobe Acrobat app opening up and stealing all my data. It's actually signed by someone at Adobe that did it. So it's the same idea.
It almost seems like this is the thing, and you're sort of in the middle of it, that is preventing interactive TV from taking place as well, and T-commerce and all these other opportunities,
MadHive, when we founded the company, the first idea was around those ideas too. I know how excited your organization gets about like what it could be, and it was like, oh, like every brand is going to have a media station at some point, or like back in the like when Sex and the City used to show the brands at the end where people then would go buy them manually. But how do you make that in a seamless, nice experience? One thing that our team did notice I think it was 2 weeks ago, Google announced or maybe it was Google or Apple announced a way to do track and trace for, COVID testing and whatnot in a privacy compliant way. And we're like, okay, so Google and Apple are talking about doing tracking and tracing in a privacy compliant way, but meanwhile the ad industry is still like complaining about like cookie syncing and privacy, so that we can like tell you in a privacy compliant way in Corona world that if two phones have been near each other and where they've been, and how that be privacy compliant, but we can't do that in the ad world. It doesn't make any sense.
If we could just get rid of cookies as well and the whole thing, I just would love all that to go away. Drives me crazy.
So can we take all this? There's a body of work that is very, very mature and has been in the market for a long time, not in the ad world, that we're moving into the ad world. And that's this body of work of basic privacy and cryptography and things like that.
Well, it sounds like a lot of really interesting things are going on behind the scenes. We actually are going to we're going to have to go. We've run out of time. So I believe that's it, unless you have anything else you'd like to add. We're looking forward to seeing what you guys are doing going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And best of luck with this endeavor. I think it's great.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to innovation coming out of MadHive.
Cool.
Thank you so much. That is Adam Helfgott. Adam Helfgott, CEO of MadHive, MadHive.com. They've got a great looking site, by the way. Go check it out. I love it. This is Tracy Swedlow of Televisionation. Thanks so much.